Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me along tonight. And it's a pleasure to come along and talk to you. I'll just very briefly give you a little bit of history all about Heart Start and DFIBs and all about it and how it came to fruition. Well, as you possibly realise, I've been involved for many years in delivering emergency first aid training throughout my teaching career, and also as a tutor assessor with British Red Cross. And I work closely with the local training officer for Scottish Ambulance Service, Mike Cassidy. Back in 1988, I was approached by Mike Cassidy, who said, "Can you come to a meeting tonight? I think you'll find it interesting." And this meeting was between British Heart Foundation and Scottish Ambulance Service. And I left the meeting as president of Heart Start Dumbarton District. This initiative was to put ambulance DFIBs on all our emergency ambulances. Now, this took off, and the support we had from the local press and from the community was fantastic. We raised over £40,000, so we equipped all the local ambulances with a DFIB. And then we found out that A&E did not have a DFIB that the ordinary staff could use. It was only a doctor. So we put a DFIB in there and also a downloader so it could be used instantly. The other thing that came along with that was training packages for each of the ambulance stations. So all the training was done on site. This was absolutely fantastic. Then I got a phone call from a friend to say, there's a vacancy on a Girl in Clyde Health Board. Why don't you go and have an interview? And I said, I'm a primary school teacher. I'm teaching, full time. And he said, oh, go on. You need to go. I said, it was a good interview experience. So off I went, was welcomed by the chairman of the board into the boardroom. And there sat the chief exec, Croy Smith. And something that annoys me intensely, if you're speaking to someone, there's no eye contact. And he's scribbling away. And it muttered, and it was the accent I picked up. And I thought, Martin Bach, and I got his attention. And I thought I'd been there for about 20 minutes. I'd been there for over an hour, and it just passed in a flash. And at the end of this, the chief exec walked me to the door, and what he said to me in Gaelic was, this is not goodbye, it's only au revoir. And all I could think about at that point was, oh, help, how am I going to explain this to my head teacher? But it worked out very well. I got 2 to 3 days off a month. I decided my salary, the cost of a supply teacher, we covered that, and it worked very well. But at that point, we now had these fantastic machines on ambulances. We had the paramedics now with the skills, but they were coming to incidents and folk were just standing there. Oh, he's not looking too good. Nobody was starting CPR. So that's something I initiated on the health board. And that's how Heart Start in the community began. And that was, heaven help me, nearly 27 coming on for 28 years ago. But this was rolled out to the communities, to schools, to groups. And I'm delighted to say what was then Helensburgh Rotary, affiliated to that, and our Rotary Club have been doing that since then, and it's been absolutely fantastic. And the number of lives that have been saved is absolutely wonderful, and that's the reward. It really is. Now, could you go to the next screen, please? It's a video that we play, and it's very short, but the impact it has really gets it home when you're explaining to people that over 3,000 people in Scotland a year suffer a cardiac arrest. And we had the initiative from Save a Life for Scotland. Here we go.
This is something you need to know. CPR is about saving lives.
If someone has a cardiac arrest, their heart is not beating anymore.
They won't be able to move, they won't be able to breathe. It's very serious.
Every second really counts.
If you don't do something, the chances of their survival will drop by 10% every minute. You have to do something quickly.
If you do CPR, this gives a little more time for help to arrive. You only have a few minutes before it's too late.
By calling for help and starting CPR, you can save a life.
Every week in Scotland, 70 people have a cardiac arrest. That's a full double-decker bus. But only 4 of them will go back to the family. That's not good enough. It doesn't have to be this way.
Why don't you learn how to do CPR?
You can save someone's life.
All you need are your hands.
I'll do it. 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 Will you?
Find out where you can learn CPR at savealive.scotland.
I feel this video really emphasises the fact that you need to do something quickly. Scottish Government Save a Life for Scotland, the out-of-hospital cardiac arrest strategy, was launched in 2020. By training 500,000 people each year, we could save 1,000 lives. So what we hope to do between 2015 and 2000 and 2015, we would save those lives. Well, we have more than succeeded in doing that. And the aim now is to get to 1 million by 2024. And as you know, most cardiac arrests are witnessed at home. And it's the vital minutes before emergency services that bystander CPR can be the single most important factor determining survival. Rapidly initiating CPR, calling for help, getting a defibrillator are paramount of importance. Lomond Rotary Club, along with community volunteers, have delivered training to over, well, in the last 2 years, John, correct me, I think it's getting on to 5,000, am I correct? And that includes during...
It was actually running at 5,000 a year, but with COVID, it obviously fell back. But we're heading rapidly
back up again.
Yeah.
But again, in the past 2 years, the Defibrillator Charity and its partners, we have located over 200 publicly accessible defibrillators in the community. And to date, this has now resulted in 49 local lives being saved. And the funds that are raised in the community stay in the community, and it's local pennies saving local lives. I was approached one morning by a lady who was one of the local councillors. She phoned to say, I keep seeing your picture in the paper with these orange bags, these defibrillators. Where do you live? And heaven help me, 20 minutes later, she was on the doorstep. And you know how you get the feeling there's something else going on here? And I made her a cup of tea, and then the floodgates opened. Sadly, she had lost her father to a cardiac arrest, and she was one of the local councillors, and there were several defibs in council offices within running distance, which was horrendous. So the next thing that happened was I got a phone call to say, I don't know what you're doing on Friday, but cancel it. I want you to come along and do a presentation, please, for the provost, councillors, and all heads of department. So I appeared with my Heart Start trainers, Trussell Search and Rescue, our first responders, and Scottish Ambulance Service Resilience Team. And we did our presentation, but I was a bit sneaky. We checked up where the defibs were in the council offices. The one at reception had been dead for about 2 years. The one on the next floor was well gone. And the one on the third floor had about maybe 6 months life in it. And afterwards, I said to the chief exec, do you have any defibs? Oh, yes. Where are they? What make are they? And I was dragging along our defib officer from Scottish Ambulance Service. And of course, the first one was FUT, the next one was FUT, and the next one only had a very short life. And I said to her, this is quite worrying, because, you know, what would happen if one of these machines was needed in an emergency? You know, you're actually failing in your duty of care, both to your employees and visitors. I got £40,000 out of them. Sorry, £50,000 out of them. And we put out another 41 defibs. And as John McPherson knows, he got dragged along as well to the launch of Western Bartonshire's defibs. And from there, this is what has been happening. Next slide, please. Well, what is Heart Start? It's teaching what to do in a life-threatening emergency. It's skills of emergency life support. They are simple. CPR is buying time and more than doubles the chances of survival. And Lomond Rotary provide emergency life support training to all our primary sevens, to the secondary schools, Police Scotland, MOD, GP surgeries, dental practices, you name it, we go out and we train. Next slide, please. Now, here you can see one of our past presidents, Ernest, and we're visiting Helensburgh Golf Club because we had an incident at Helensburgh Golf Club. This was the first life that had been saved. I came home from holiday and I got a message from one of the members to say, Sheenah, we've used your jump leads and they worked. I went, pardon? One of the golfers heard cries for help. And it was a garden close to the actual green. And Jenny had made her husband's lunch, had lunch, sent him out to cut the grass, came out with a cup of tea, and there he was, cardiac arrest, stone dead. As she said, she went into utter panic. She said, I'm a nurse, I deal with this in hospitals, I've dealt with it in the street, but when it's your nearest and dearest, you turn 2 minutes. So her shouts for help, one of the golfers jumped over the fence, another golfer dialed 999, and another golfer who was getting out of his car went for the defib. And here you can see the 3 gentlemen in the middle being presented with their certificates of recognition for saving a life. And on this occasion, we invited Julian and his wife to come along and present the certificates. Next slide, please. This is the coverage, as you can see, in the local press, which was absolutely fantastic. And then Julian had said, and you're coming back and we're going to do another Heart Start course because I need to know what to do if anything else happened to somebody else. So this was literally within weeks of installing the defib. Next slide, please. And then the next one, this is outside the sugar boat in Helensburgh in Cahoon Square. And as John will tell you, this defib is like a piece of elastic. The number of times we've replaced the pads, it's been absolutely amazing. And again, everybody's passing it, they see it, they know where it is, they know what to do. We've trained all the shopkeepers all round about, and this really does work. So this was the presentation of the defib in the town centre. You can see some of our team there too, one of our paramedics. Next slide, please. The next one, this was a defib presentation at Cardress, and the elderly gentleman on the right-hand side, and I can never get it right, it's the nickname, the Buffaloes. It's the something organization of buffaloes, and they decided they would like to gift and fund a defib, which they did, and this was the presentation of this one in Cardress. We now have 4 in Cardress, and this one has saved 3 lives. Next slide, please. After this, please can we have some training? So Maggie MacArthur, who was the local minister, she sent emails out to the whole of the community, and we said we would do 3 sessions. 76 people turned up. We did survive it and we did get through it, but it was an absolutely fantastic session. And it was a case of all Heart Start trainers, hands on deck, you're having to help. Next slide, please. Now, this is our own club. This is at the Rosslea, and we managed to get things organised, and there is now a DFib available 24/7 at the Rosslea Hall Hotel, where we meet. And Mike Banyard, one of the paramedics, is also one of the paramedics who was on my Heart Start Dumbarton District Committee and has been very supportive of the project. Next slide, please. The next one was for Luss. And one of the community policemen said, Sheenah, can you come along to the community council meeting at Luss? They're kind of looking for information about a DFib. So I went along with one of the paramedics. We explained how a DFib worked. I explained how to go about getting one. And I said, so you all need to put your hands in your pockets and help raise funds. Now, the lady in the middle of that took her checkbook out. That was Sir Ivor Cahoon's wife. So that was how Luss's DFib arrived at Luss Estates. And that one also is like a piece of elastic. That's on its third battery. Next slide, please. After this, the first time this DFib was used, I got a phone call from the manager to say, oh, Sheenah, we've used the DFib. Help, what do I do? And I said, it's fine. The spare pad's there. Talked him through what to do. And the next morning, I went up just to check everything was okay. What had happened was they were holding the ceilidh there after the Luss Highland Games. And one of our friends was dancing with Ibel, and suddenly she dropped. Andrew thought that, oh, heck, no, she's fallen over. No, she hadn't fallen over. She'd had a cardiac arrest. And that was soon realised. And one of the staff shouted for help, started CPR, and it was two firemen having a meal, saw somebody run past with the DFib, so they got up to help and shared the CPR. So when this happens, we invite those who have helped to save a life to meet up with the casualty, and this was us celebrating saving a life. And those are the people in the background and some of our Heart Start trainers and first responders who came along to assist Ibel. And it was funny that day when I walked into reception, Andrew was there and he said to me, what are you doing here, Sheenah? I said, oh, I'm here to check the DFib. And he said, I was dancing with Ibel and this is her husband. So I'd said to the manager, right, get everybody into the library. Let's just check, see how everybody's doing and talk them through. We all had a cup of coffee, sorted out the DFib. And this gentleman walked in and he said, oh, I don't mean to intrude, but I recognize the gentleman who's the husband of the lady who collapsed. And he said, I was just inquiring as to how she is. And so her husband was explaining. He said, I'm a cardiologist and I got up to come and see what I could do. I wasn't needed. You all did very well indeed. And that was fantastic. It really showed them that they really had saved a life. And quite often when this happens, okay, so you've saved a life and you're on a high. But the next thing that happens is it's the what ifs. Did I do this correctly? Did I do that? And this was wonderful because it lifted the anxiety and it showed them that they had the confidence and they had saved a life. Next slide, please. And this was the report in the local press. Staff are praised for their calm reactions. They were absolutely fantastic. But I must say, the next day, they were absolutely in bits. And they had muscles that they didn't know that existed after doing CPR for that length of time. Next slide, please. Now, here we are at Araka Primary School. The kids are absolutely fantastic. Now, the little girl at the front with the fair hair, she was absolutely wonderful. One of the paramedics popped in to see how we were doing, and he said, there's Ailey, and Ailey's fantastic. Do you know that she saved her dad's life just a few weeks ago? And seemingly Dad had keeled over. They'd had their Heart Start training. She got her little brother to go and do 999. Mother's brain was mince. She started CPR, and the little brother was doing the 2 puffs, and the gentleman survived. Now we train the pupils. Next slide, please. Then we deal with the teachers. And 9 times out of 10, it's a 3-day course. It's pupils, staff, and then the parents or the community arrive. So there's the staff and Alison, the head teacher, with her staff. Fantastic bunch. Next slide, please. Now, we had the opening of Helensburgh Civic Centre. So I said, this centre is going to be used by umpteen organisations, meetings. It's right in a very busy spot in Helensburgh. And that was one of the defibs that we also put in there. And there you've got the provost handing it over to the provost. And the gentleman to his left was the chap who dealt with the estates. And he was wonderful in cutting through all the red tape to help us do this. That defib is in the car park. It's available 24/7. And that's another defib that's like a piece of elastic. Next slide, please. This is a mobile app that was launched by Trossock Search and Rescue, and you can put it on your phone. That is now being reviewed at the moment because there's still quite a bit of work to be done. But at the beginning, that worked very well indeed. So that was the launch of the app. Next slide, please. This was the Clydebank event I was telling you about. And when we arrived at the event, the shock I got was, Sheenah, will you speak? Will you just launch it? I thought I was just coming along to back the council, but as John knows, we all mucked in. And there you can see all the people involved. Now, working with HeartStart, putting defibs out, it's not just Rotary. You have to engage with your community. Now, these are our partners. HeartStart and defibs in the community, it's a partnership. Next slide, please. Now, this was something that came as a shock. I received a letter from the Cabinet Office to find I had been mentioned in the Queen's Birthday Honours List, and I was awarded the BEM for my work in the local community, also with HeartStart and Macmillan Cancer Support. Next slide, please. Now, this is at Save a Life for Scotland. We had been working with Lisa Macmillan, Save a Life for Scotland, and she'd said, I need help at the NHS conference. Can you come? And she'd got other first responders and teams to come along. I said, why do you need us? She said, because half of the employees of the NHS don't know how to do CPR properly. So there we were, our team, training the medics how to do it. There was one spot in between one of the sessions when this young GP came flying up and she said, help me, help me. And I said, what's the matter? And she said, the gentleman in front of me collapsed and I didn't know what to do. So we calmed her down, sorted her out and went through all the steps. And she's now fine. And she's now a HeartStart trainer. Next slide, please. Right, public access defibrillators. These are the things you really need to consider. Now, every defib will work, but they're all very different. You need to do your homework about all the different models. First of all, how much does it cost? It may be a very reasonable cost, and that's great, but you may find when you go to replace the pads or the batteries, they're extortionate. Now, is it single use or multiple use? And as you will remember today, Bill, we talked about single-use defibrillators. Yes, they last for 2 years and then they're futs and it costs a fortune. Again, availability and delivery time. Well, we're very fortunate with the supplier that we use because we get our orders very promptly. And again, if we need replacement pads, replacement batteries, things like that, they're literally on our doorstep within 24 hours. Now, the guarantee, the extent of cover, and the length of warranty. The iPad SR that we use, Well Medical guarantee the warranty for 7 years. But if the defib is registered with them, they will then extend the warranty for 10 years. And what they also do is come and collect the defib and they update all the software at no extra charge. Ease of use. Now, these defibs have been used by primary school kids. The second life that was saved was round about the October time. We had been into one of the primary schools on the peninsula and they were back at school after the October holiday. two wee lads walking to school. Wee Jessie shot past them, hanging onto a bag in the purse to dive into the newsagents to get a rose in the paper and promptly dropped dead. Wee lad ran over and went, Mrs., Mrs., are you okay? The other wee boy ran in, said to the newsagent, please will you dial 999 now? There's a lady who's collapsed outside. She's unconscious, she's not breathing, and we need an ambulance with a defibrillator. A what? And it was the wee boy that made the 999 call. Ambulance control played the recording back to me. The community policeman was in Gaylorhead, and he was blue lighting it to the scene, and he's driving along, and he can see these two kids, you know, stuck in it to the CPR, adults standing watching. Black saloon car approaches scene. Young man gets out, clatters this kid. What are you doing mugging this lady? And the wee boy just grabbed his arms and pulled him down and said, Mister, push as hard as you can, I'm knackered. As the other wee boy ran back with the defib. And as Andy Crawford, the policeman, got there, they had the pads on and they had delivered the first shock. Now, when we visit the schools on the peninsula, wee Jessie comes in with the bonnet on and gives all the kids what for. I could be your granny, so just you listen up and get this right, because it could be your granny, and I'm here because two wee boys just let you save my life. I mean, and that's what really gets home. It really makes that difference. Again, it's the time for the defib to reach full charge. The one we use is ready to go in 6 seconds. The cost of batteries and replacements we get at a very reduced price or without VAT, which is fantastic. And the availability of the batteries and pads and delivery times, we don't have a problem with. Again, this defib that we use, a paramedic, when he arrives, can plug into it. That goes straight through to the Golden Jubilee. There's a consultant looking at that. He knows the history of this patient. He's advising the paramedic what drugs to use. And again, when they reach hospital, they know what's coming in. These are all the things. Minutes and seconds count, and this is what saves a life. Next slide, please. This was another shock. Angela McNeil, who's our coordinator on Greater Glasgow and Clyde Health Board, phoned me, and she said, Sheenah, we're going to nominate Heart Start projects in Argyll and Clyde for the NHS Awards. I said, that's fantastic. And then she phoned me back to say, Sheenah, we've been shortlisted to the final 3. So I was asked to go along to the NHS Awards with one of my fellow Heart Start trainers. And I nearly needed a defib when Fred Macaulay announced that Heart Start projects in Argyll and Clyde had won the Volunteers Award for that year. And I said, I was accepting this trophy on behalf of all the Heart Start trainers and all the people who had been involved. And at that point, we had trained over 300,000 people. And that, I mean, speaks for itself. And just before we left, a gentleman came over to say, we have to come and speak to you. And this is my wife. I collapsed with a heart attack. And it was someone who had been on a Heart Start course, recognized that I was in cardiac arrest and got somebody to grab that defib. And that's why I'm alive today. Thank you. Next slide. Save a Life for Scotland. As I've said, over 3,500 people in Scotland are treated by the ambulance service for cardiac arrest. Unfortunately, only 1 in 20 will survive. I'm delighted to tell you this is now down to 1 in 10 because of what we're doing. And in our area, as John knows, I nearly had a fit when I got a phone call from the resuscitation research unit to say, why are the figures higher in your area than other places? So John Webb and the first responder and I got dragged off to Edinburgh University to explain what we were doing and could they please video how we did our training. So starting CPR saves lives and it more than doubles the chance of survival. So as we've said to everybody, let's be ready. We're asking you to say, I'll do it and be one of the 500,000 people in Scotland getting trained in CPR. Starting an improvement programme could now result in a total of 1,000 additional lives being saved by 2020. Now, more than that is now actually happening. because of Heart Start and the amount of training in our area, which is absolutely fantastic. And that's our reward. Next slide, please. Why are we involved? It helps us engage with the community. It provides a service to our community. Schools provide Rotarians of the future, and it's superb publicity for Rotary. So come on, everybody, say I'll do it and help us save lives. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm delighted to answer any questions.